What is up, my YouTube family? Welcome back to my channel. If this is your first time here, then it's just welcome to my channel and not welcome back. Go ahead and hit the subscribe button because you will not be disappointed unless you know it's an issue with your taste level. If that's the case, I don't know how to help you. I hope you guys are well and taking care of yourselves. And the girls that are interested in gardening, it was really nothing to update you on this week because I've had to start so many plants new. But the next video I do is going to be like a gardening one-on-one. So if you have any questions in particular you want me to answer, leave them down below. Let me know. It's gonna be like a very straightforward, if you want to get into gardening, this is what you need to do. Very ABC. Okay, y'all stay trying to tuck my little hair behind the ear, girl, like it's long. It's long. It is indeed long. I am not going to waste any more time before getting into what we are discussing today, which is the case of Jaime Osuna, a menace to society, child. But we're going to start at the very beginning of his story. He was born in Bakersville, California on March 7th of 1988, making him a Pisces, and he was actually born the same year as me. His mother, Michelle, is 19, and his father is 21, and just about from the moment of conception, little Jaime has been going through it, okay? Things between his mother and his father are not the best. His father is a very volatile man, very angry, very abusive. Jaime suffered a head injury before he was even born, while he was still baking in the womb. She was about 9 months pregnant with him when his father lashed out at Michelle and kicked her in the stomach. Michelle forgave him for that day. They tried to go on with the relationship, but on the day of his birth, there was a visual reminder of that day. He had a scar on his right ear, a nice little dent. And Jaime actually suffers a second head injury as a toddler during a car incident that we'll get into in just a moment. So it was already a little touch and go from the beginning. Around the age of 1, his father decides he's going to leave the home, which is probably one of the best things that has happened to Jaime. And this leaves his mother, Michelle, behind to raise not only him, but his older brother as a single mother. But mama is not single and alone for long, okay? Before Jaime even turns 2, she is entering into her second relationship with a guy named Jeff. Now, quiet as it's kept, they said she was already cheating with Jeff, and this was part of the reason why she and her baby's father did not work out. Can't confirm that, but they do get married before Jeff even turns 2. She and her sons move in with Jeff, who also has a son from a previous relationship that he shows very obvious favoritism toward. And he's not nice to either of Michelle's sons, but Jaime gets it the worst for whatever reason. There is one incident, according to Michelle, where they are all in the car returning from a fishing trip, and Jaime is crying. He's a very young child, like diaper size. He is crying because his diaper needs changing, so he's very fussy, which irritates Jeff. He reaches back, opens up the car door, and pushes Jaime's car seat completely out of a moving car. He was strapped in it, but y'all, ain't that a lot of drama? Michelle was terrified because she realized like there was a truck that had been driving behind them this whole time that of course kept coming, but luckily the car seat landed upright and out of the way of traffic. Now Jeff pulls the car over so she can go back and get her baby out of the road, but refuses to take him to the hospital just to get checked out. And according to Michelle, he would not even allow her to do so on her own. She also says that there was a time when Jaime was 5 years old. Jeff tied him to a tree outside and whipped him as a form of punishment. And that was the one time that she did intervene because she felt like that was just taking things too far. She actually calls the police on him this time. And how lunging him out of the backseat of a moving car strapped to a plastic chair was not too far, I don't know. But this took the cake. Jeff had untied the child by the time the police had arrived, and he tried to explain himself away by saying this was just a joke. He was just playing with the child. The grooves from the rope that are still very visible tell a different side of the story, baby. They tell more of the truth, that he was not joking. He was intentionally being cruel and abusive. For this, he is arrested and pleads guilty to child cruelty as well as inflicting injury on a child. And by now, he and Michelle have had 2 children of their own. Jeff absolutely fawns over his 2 biological children and treats them very well. Nothing like he treats Michelle's 2 sons that are not his. And fortunately for the older brother, Jeff had become very upset with him and had thrown a fork at him that like stuck him a little bit. When their grandparents found out that this had happened, they take the older brother in. But the grandfather refused to allow the younger brother, Jaime, to also come live with them. And he knew that Jaime was being treated bad as well, which is very strange. There were members of Jaime's family that were interviewed later on that said that their grandfather always had a disdain for Jaime. He just never liked him. In fact, the words that they used was that the grandfather hated Jaime, which I don't understand because he was such a small child. So this leaves Jaime behind to endure all, basically, of his stepfather's wrath. According to Michelle, Jaime's mother, Jeff's disdain for Jaime and his treatment of the child only got worse after they had their own children. It's like his love for his own children just fueled his hatred for the child that wasn't his. Within days of being arrested, Jeff is right back in the house with Michelle and the kids as if nothing has happened and absolutely nothing changes. Now, I don't know why everybody wanted to treat this child this way. Michelle said that he was a very loving and affectionate child. But when he was just 8 years old, his own uncle throws a brick at him. And I have no other context. For whatever reason, none of the male figures in his life really cared for him. There are times where Jeff would deny him food for days at a time. He would refuse to allow him to eat and he would force him to sit and watch the rest of the family have dinner. Jeff would have this go on for days at a time where everybody eats in front of him. Nobody is able to give him a morsel of food. And then when Jeff is finally able to allow the boy to eat, he will put his food on a plate and put the plate on the floor like a dog. And he is not able to just sit on the floor and eat. He has to eat with his face straight out of the dish. And he would do this in front of Jaime's mother, his siblings. Everybody would watch. For the kids, it was something they had seen their entire lives, so it wasn't out of the norm for them. And let Michelle tell it, by this time, she is also being abused by Jeff, and she is extremely afraid of him. He said that she felt bad for her son. She hated to see it and she wanted to step in and take up for him, but she really was just too afraid. And she also says that Jeff would tell her regularly, like if she ever tried to leave, that he would hunt them down. And one time she had tried to grab her things and leave with the children. He'd whipped her and then poured salt all over her. Now, Jaime would go to school unkept, and he was extremely antisocial, so there were signs that things were going on at home. No one ever asked any questions or expressed any concerns. One evening, it's raining really hard. Jeff's punishment for Jaime is for him to stand outside in the rain. The child is begging to come back in and knocking on the door. Jeff is standing inside of the house, but at the top level at a window that's over the boy standing downstairs. Jeff bangs on the glass window really hard for Jaime to shut up, and he ends up shattering the glass. It falls down on the child, and the injuries sustained were so bad that he had to get stitches. Now, Jaime has claimed to have also suffered sexual abuse from his stepfather. He admits to taking his anger out on small animals, killing them, and he also began engaging in self-harm. Finally, when he reaches the age of 12, his grandparents change their mind. Well, his grandfather changes his mind about allowing Jaime to come live with them. But it was kind of late at this time because Michelle admits that by then she had noticed the change in her child. He was no longer that sweet, affectionate little boy that he had been before Jeff. Michelle says that by the time he went to live with his grandparents, he was devoid of emotion and very detached. And as a teenager, he is really up there acting up with his grandparents. He joins a little street gang. He is getting into trouble with them. He is out here engaging in criminal behavior. He racks up charges for petty theft, possession of drugs, assault. He was deep in the streets with each of his crimes becoming progressively worse. And to top it all off, y'all, he is also out here using meth. At age 15, he gets into a nasty little brawl with another boy at school. He ends up stabbing the student that he is fighting with. And this results in him spending the next 4 years of his life locked up. He serves the entire 4 years before he is released back to the public. And less than a year later, he goes to this house party being hosted for a 16-year-old. Now, the house party is being hosted by the 16-year-old's parents. The boy's mother, Jane, has put everything together. She has funded all of the things. She was one of those moms who was like, I'd rather you do it at home with me where I know you're safe. You're not going to drive. You're not going to do nothing stupid. You're at home. So that was the vibe for this party. And that was Jane's vibe. She was kind of like a cool mom. She is there at the party watching everything. She is partaking in the snacks, the beverages, the alcohol, okay, that she has supplied, and mama gets drunk at the party. She starts dancing with some of the party goers. Her nephew, who is also in attendance, he is not pleased or entertained with how she is acting and the fact that she is dancing with this particular person. And he is over in the corner talking about it and expressing himself. Among the people who are listening to him complain is Jaime. And Jaime offers to be the big bad guy and go over there and break it up. The nephew gives him the okay to handle it. He goes to the kitchen and grabs a knife, comes back and pokes the young boy that the mother is dancing with. Now, it appears that Jaime had his own motivations for breaking up the dancing between the mother and the boy. He is hauled right back off to prison for this, but he and Jane keep in touch the whole time that he's in jail. They write each other almost daily. They spend a lot of time on the phone. They label each other as good friends with a 17-year age difference. And Jane would say to anyone who questioned why she was talking to this young boy, she'd say that Jaime was very intelligent. He held good conversation and he is also very charming. So she enjoyed talking to him. When his date for release comes up, she actually volunteers to go and pick him up. And when she does, mama is a bit taken aback. Jaime now has one of his eyes tattooed, like it has clown makeup on it, and he has the Joker smile tattooed across his face. It is a very harsh reminder of his lack of seriousness. Jane says that she never was taking Jaime all that serious. He was just somebody to talk to pass time, and she enjoyed it. Then she really decided she wasn't going to take him serious after she saw the face tattoos. She was just going to have a good time. So her and Jaime pull up to a hotel, pay for the night, and have a very wild adult exchange between the two of them. And then a couple weeks later, Jane finds out that she had gotten pregnant that night at the hotel. So things get real. She says that she was not all that into him at all, but Jaime was really into Jane. Like really into her. So she figured with this being her now fourth child, it might be in her best interest to try to settle down and take this man serious and make it work. Jaime asks her to marry him. She says yes, and the two of them exchange marriage vows in February of 2010. The ceremony is hosted at Jaime's grandmother's home. He is 22 now, Jane is 39. He was really excited about the wedding. He made a lot of the decisions regarding color, flowers. He was very involved in the process. From the start to the end, he was also really excited about becoming a father. He looked absolutely thrilled on their wedding day in their wedding pictures, and Jane just appeared to be in a daze. It takes a little bit of time for her to come around, but late in her pregnancy, she does begin to develop like more romantic, serious feelings for Jaime. Unfortunately though, that is when she begins to see a different side of Jaime and why he identifies so much with the Joker. It was like a light switch flip. The once sweet young man that had made her all of these promises quickly became very jealous and condescending. Jaime becomes very physically and mentally abusive to Jane all throughout her pregnancy, just like his father was with his own mother. And about 6 months into her pregnancy, they are arguing on one night, having a disagreement. Jaime grabs her father's ashes from the mantle and leaves the home. She is calling him, telling him to bring him back. This is obviously something that she cares a lot about, but Jaime is not listening. So then she calls the police on him, and this stunt lands him right back in prison. The father's ashes were never recovered, which is sick. He spends the next 6 months of his life in jail before he is paroled, and of course by that time, he and Jane's child has been born. It's a son. Jaime somehow convinces Jane to give him another chance to be this great husband and father. He promises her that he won't be the same, that he has changed. He wants to be better than his father, but nothing about him has changed in 6 months. The changes that Jane does see, they're all for the worse. Jaime is back on meth, which intensifies his aggression toward her. A lot of the time, he just wants a reaction. That is where he is getting his little kicks off. So she has learned to ignore him, and she's actually become numb to the things that he says to her. Sometimes she gets to fighting him back. There was one night in particular where he is upset and he breaks a picture frame. She had then grabbed a shard of the glass and it cut him across the arm, and the cut was really deep. She scared herself. especially when she realized that she had nicked a vein that was poking out his arm. And he wasn't afraid at all. She said this is when she knew that he was really crazy. When he grabbed that duct tape, closed it, taped it up, and put a black sock on his arm, she knew he wasn't wrapped too tight. She knew he was slower than a parked car. This man refused to go to the hospital. He was all taped up and ready to heal. There is one particular evening where he is on a nasty little tirade, okay? And Jane is ignoring him. She is letting him get it all out. She is paying him no mind. She is going about her motherly duties. But Jaime here wants a reaction. He is giving her absolutely no choice but to engage because he looks her dead in her eyes, goes over to her 7-year-old son that was from a previous relationship, and while looking Jane right in her eyes, pushes the child off of the bed onto the hardwood floor. And this, for Jane, is the straw that breaks the camel's back. She gets not one, but 2 knives from the kitchen. She charges him with the knives. The older kids are like, girl, what's going on? Relax. But she is not trying to relax because Jaime got her messed up on this good evening, touching her child like this. He realizes how serious she is, and so he just asks if he could just have a moment to call his grandmother to come pick him up. She allows him to do that, but she tells him to leave and not return. He ends up violating his parole and going back to jail again. But he is only locked up for a couple of months, and he is released on Halloween 2011. At this point, his face is completely tattooed up like the Joker. Him being released on Halloween was perfect. It was like a seamless transition right back into society. But unfortunately, everybody else's scary little masks came off later on that night, and his was permanent. He immediately resumes harassing his wife, Jane, threatening her, threatening the children, threatening to take the kids away from her. He will call CPS almost every day, and sometimes he will call multiple times a day, making these outlandish claims of abuse against Jane. Then he will call Jane and tell her randomly that he's on his way to the house, to her and the kids. She ends up making several calls to the police requesting that an officer come out after he's made such claims. More often than not, nobody even ever shows up to her house to make sure everything is okay. She would end up just calling back multiple times and being told by dispatch that someone would eventually be out. Now, one evening, he changes up his tune. Not only does he threaten her and say he's on his way to the house, he also tells her that she should keep an eye out for the news because he has taken the life of a woman inside of the Morocco motel. Now, as soon as she gets off the phone with him, she calls the police again because she knew that he was fully capable of doing something like that. On the call, he'd also admitted to stalking her, showing up at her house and watching them through the windows. And she says to the 911 operator, quote, "He's told me that he's been to my house and he has really small feet for a man, and there's footprints outside of my window." Girl, not the small feet for a man. That's crazy. She then adds the fact that he admitted on the call that he had stabbed a woman at this motel and that if nobody's called it in, they need to send an officer out there to check it out. She says on the call he is, quote, really psycho, and she doesn't want a woman to be out there suffering and no one knowing to call for help. So this is what she's trying to do. The dispatcher tells her that they'll send someone out, but does not follow up. And when she follows up, she is told that they checked into it, but there was nothing going on there. Jane has said that she did not believe that they had really sent an officer out. So she just reiterates the fact that this woman is likely not in the state where she can call police herself, and she just hopes that she is not there in one of the rooms suffering. 5 days after this night that she's calling 911, Jane is watching the news and she sees that Yvette Pena, a 36-year-old mother of 6, had been found slain inside of one of the motel rooms by a member of the maintenance staff. Yvette Pena had been living at the hotel at the time and had been found gagged with several different objects lodged into her bag. She had been discovered on November 13th, and they estimate that she had been there for about 5 days, which means the night that she was attacked was the same night that Jaime had called Jane, admitted to it, and she had called the police to have them send an officer to that motel. So now they are interested in what Miss Jane had to say, and she, of course, points them in the direction of Jaime. When Jaime is brought in for questioning, he denies having anything to do with Yvette Pena, and says that if he did tell Jane something like that, It was not true. It was just something to scare her. He then goes into blaming Jane for a lot of his actions, making it seem like he was preyed upon by this older woman and that she had groomed him and had altered his way of thinking. He said that she was crazy and delusional. And while he's running down this long list of all these things that he says he does not like about this woman, these horrible things about Jane, the detectives interviewing him realized something. Yvette Pena has a very strong resemblance to Jane. When they point this out to him, he actually agrees and says, yeah, they do look alike. One of the detectives then asks, so what did you do? What happened? Did you see her and decide to take out your feelings and all of your disdain for Jane onto this woman? At this point, Jaime has nothing else to say. His interview wraps with the officer saying to him, if she brings out so much darkness in him, he needs to get away from her, and he says to that he doesn't know how. Now, he is placed under arrest for Yvette Pena's murder, and while locked away, he immediately resumes his harassing phone calls to Jane. When she blocks the prison number, he calls somebody else and has them call her on three-way. He tells her that him being in jail does not mean that she is safe, and he has a smashed rat mailed to her home. He also had one sent to the DA, and he was caught passing off a letter to another inmate that had Jane's address on it and instructions to get rid of her. As if things are not crazy and toxic enough, everything just out of hand. One random day, not long after Jaime has been hauled off to jail, CPS comes knocking on Jane's door, along with the police, because her youngest son has told an adult that Jane had hit him. And so they take her to jail for misdemeanor cruelty to a child. And now both of them are locked up, Jane and Jaime. Whether or not this was true or whether or not somehow Jaime got to talk to his son and plant that seed in his head and had him tell somebody that his mama had hit him and it wasn't true, I don't know. But now we have Jane and Jaime in jail. Jaime and Jane each have a court date with CPS. And the day of, they end up on the same little jail bus headed to their court. Jane gets on last with a Hispanic woman. She doesn't really think much of it. And unbeknownst to her, this girl knows exactly who she is because this girl knows Jaime. And Jaime has instructed her to attack Jane in exchange for drugs. So she instantly gets to wailing on Jane. Jane is completely caught off guard and she is screaming, "Child, just having a terrible day." Jaime is on the bus screaming like a caged animal. The prison staff, they struggle to separate the women. Then they're able to continue to go to court. Not long after this, Jaime is found passing off yet another note to another cellmate. This note has Jane's cell number, not her cell phone number, her cell block number. It has her prison information on it and says that there is a price tag on her head. Now, the charges against Jane are eventually dropped, but by the time she got out of jail, her 4 children were split up everywhere. Okay, she regains custody of she and Jaime's child, which was her youngest. The older 3, 2 of them had one father, one child had their own father. She is able to get the 2 that have the same father, but the one that had his own daddy, she completely lost custody of. He got to keep the child permanently. Now, while being held in jail, waiting on his day in court, Jaime admits to being one of the last people to see Yvette Pena alive. He says that he did see her on November 13th, the day she was discovered, but she was alive when they parted ways. And he doesn't know what happened to her after the fact, which we know is a lie because by the day she was discovered, she had been deceased 5 days already. He continues to swear up and down that he is innocent. He pleads not guilty and publicly states that he hopes Yvette's family is able to find the real killer, but it is not him. They had denied him bail, so he just sat there in jail over in Kern County. And his trial is delayed so many times that he ends up sitting in jail for 6 years before it begins. March 27, 2017, on a Monday, was supposed to kick off his trial, but on March 24th, 2017, that Friday before, he asked to be interviewed by a female journalist. He sits across from her and the very first thing out of his mouth is, "You know I did it, right?" During his 6-year stay, he has tattooed his entire face. He is looking like a real live villain, and what he is about to say to this woman just compliments his look. He tells the journalist that he is guilty of everything that he has been accused of, and then some. He also says, quote, All in all, I wouldn't change anything. I loved what I experienced and I love what I've gone through. Until this day, they asked me if I can go back in time and change anything. Will I? No, I will not. Even in this case, this murder case, if I could go back and change it, I would do it again and over again. And if I'm released, I'll probably end up back here with the same thing. When she asked him about the feeling that he gets from taking a life, like why does he enjoy it so much? He says, it's a rush, it's an addiction, it's a drug. I'd rather do that than have sex with the beautifulest woman in the world. I don't care if you're my brother or sister. I don't care if you're whoever. It's self-gratification. Now, during the interview, he admits that Yvette Pena was not his first victim. He had 2 more before her that he tells her he has not yet been linked to because he cleaned up the scene really well. He just didn't care to clean up the scene in the case of Yvette, and he has a reason why. According to him, in the case of Yvette, he was very well aware that he had left behind a very messy crime scene. His DNA, fingerprints, other items of evidence that could be traced back to him, and all of this was done by design. He wanted to be caught because he no longer wanted to be a part of society and was basically ready for his free 3 hots and a cot. Well, free to him. He does not mind being in prison for the rest of his life. He just does not want to get the death penalty. He tells the journalist that his plan for going to court Monday, just in a couple of days, is to change his plea to a guilty plea and use these other 2 crimes that they don't know are his crimes as leverage to make sure that he is not given the death penalty. He said they were not about to pull the plug on him. Now, he could do life in prison. He could manage that. That's actually the goal. But he was not about to sit in that chair, okay? She tries to get more information from him about these other 2 crimes. But all he would tell her is that one was a male. That was the first one. A 27-year-old man that he killed allegedly when he was just 13 years old. And the second was a 32-year-old woman that he ran into when he was 18 years old. He asked him if he has any remorse. He says absolutely not. And she lets him know, like, when people hear your story, when they hear our interview, they're going to call you a monster. And she asks him if he feels like that would be a fair assessment. He says he does not see himself as a monster, but someone who is not afraid to indulge himself without the consequences and doesn't let society mold him. Jaime said, y'all allow yourselves to be molded like clay. But he himself, he's self-made. Jaime says, I am fully aware of what's right and what's wrong and that there are consequences for the wrong and what those consequences are. And still he does what he wants to do without any fear of those consequences whatsoever. And that is something that he is very proud of. Child, if you scared they gonna pull the plug on you, put you in that little chair and put that cap on you, put that kneeling arm, you are afraid of the consequences because you fear that. So I beg to differ, but you know, whatever. Don't have too much pride because that's not all the way true. So now at the end of the interview, the journalist is sitting on top of all this new information. This is a super high profile case. She is wondering if she should go to the prosecutor with the information or if she should just sit back and let everything play out and see if he actually does in court on Monday what he just told her he's about to do. Ultimately, she decides to just let it play out, and she messy like me because she was in attendance come Monday. When Monday rolls around, instead of proceeding with the trial and to avoid the death penalty, Jaime enters a guilty plea. So his plan to get a plea deal that would allow him to avoid the death penalty, it works. Yvette's sister Danielle requests that his upcoming sentencing be scheduled for May 15th of 2017, which would have been Yvette Pena's 42nd birthday, and nobody has an objection. Not the judge, not the lawyers on either side. So it is scheduled for then. And he is sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Now, 2 years into his prison sentence, in 2019, Jaime commits another horrifying crime. He beheads and dissects another inmate by the name of Luis Romero. The parts that he removed from Luis, he strung up around the cell like decor, which included a finger, an eye, and a lung. With Louise's blood, he writes, "On the wall of the cell, I am a man with 1,000 faces." And he also uses a blade to carve a Joker-like smile into his own face. Another message that he writes on the wall in blood is, "You will never be lonely, you will never be sad, you will always have me to dance with," which is a line from an old Batman comic book where the Joker has said this to Batman. And when the guards come around to do the morning check, Jaime is wearing a necklace made out of string, and the pendant is one of Louise's body parts. I don't think the actual body part that it was has been publicly stated or released. It was a part of Louise that he was wearing around his neck. Louise had served 27 years in prison up to that point, and he had just recently been made eligible for parole, so he was on his way home. The motivation behind the act is completely unknown. The two of them did not have a problem. They had not even been cellmates for a full 24 hours. And Jaime Osuna was known to be a very unpredictable, volatile, and violent inmate. He was categorized as an extremely dangerous prisoner. So Louise's family is very upset at the fact that they had even been put together in the same cell, especially right before Louise was being released. Furthermore, there were several cell checks that should have been done overnight. And according to the guards' records, they had not missed a single walkthrough, which was supposed to take place every 30 minutes. The log said that they had done the walkthrough, everything was fine, but there was no way that Jaime could have done this and nothing be noticed until the next morning. There was no way. Louise's mother files a lawsuit against the prison sergeant who had placed her son in Jaime's cell, but a judge ultimately rules that she failed to prove her claims of wrongful death and negligent supervision against them. The judge also stated that they didn't believe the prison sergeant could have foreseen that the procedures for inmates would have been ignored by the staff. Of course, a lot of people disagree and feel as though it was a completely preventable death and possibly a setup. And out of the 365 days in a year, 265 if you let Portia tell it, of all the days for Louise to have been placed inside of Jaime's cell, he was placed in Jaime's cell on Jaime's 31st birthday, like a gift wrapped with a bow. The prison issues a formal statement stating that they will conduct a thorough investigation if they happen to come across any evidence that suggests that there was foul play involved. When asked directly about the details surrounding those two being paired up and if it's possible that this was a malicious act of someone on the staff, the prison responded by saying they were not obligated to disclose that information. Now, Louis's family also made a claim that while they were on one of the final phone calls that they had had with him, they heard a guard in the background say, "I got that special celly for you." So when asked about this claim made by Louis's family and whether or not that had been investigated, because all the prison calls are recorded, right? They say that they did investigate that and they are not obligated to disclose to the public their findings. They confirmed that the process of pairing two inmates is that first, a committee vets each inmate to confirm that they are both suitable and fit to even have a cellmate, because some people, they just don't play well with others and it's in the file, so they keep them alone. Next, they're supposed to select two inmates based on their characteristics and how well they'll get along. They're supposed to complement one another. So after that is determined that they do, the two are introduced to get a feel for one another, and both of them have to sign off and consent to being cellmates. The prison confirms that that is the due process, but they also say that they cannot legally say whether or not that protocol was followed or not in the case of Louise and Jaime. And they were never able to produce any paperwork to the courts suggesting that they had followed this protocol. For the slaying of Luis Romero, Jaime will not stand trial. March of 2021, he is deemed incompetent and unable to. There were a total of 205 photographs taken of the crime scene inside of the cell and an additional 67 autopsy photos. All of them are extremely graphic and violent, and Jaime got to see them during one of the hearings beforehand. After he receives word that he will not have to go through with trial, he requests a a personal copy of each of the 272 photos total, and a judge denies it because, be for real, sir, like, why would they give you those? I got my girl in here sleeping in the corner today, and she's sleeping all dainty and cute. She ain't snoring like blue. Jaime's mother, Michelle, has since spoken out publicly, and she said that she feels like she should trade places with her son. She said that what happened is a result of her not protecting him when she should have, and being too afraid to stand up for him. Jane, his ex-wife now, because she has divorced him, she has also since spoken out about her journey post Jaime, and said that she's had to go through a lot of therapy. And she often questions why it was Yvette and not her. She said that she also felt a lot of guilt because he targeted Yvette for no other reason than their resemblance. She knows that she is the one that he had all that animosity for and wanted to do those things to, but for whatever reason he decided not to do it to her. So it's taken a lot for her to get rid of that guilt, and she is doing her best to move on now. As far as what he did to Louis, she too feels like her son should have never had a cellmate, especially given his well-documented violent nature. While awaiting his trial during those 6 years, he had slashed another inmate across the face, causing him to have 67 stitches put in. And this guy that he had attacked had refused to allow his pictures to be taken to go on file. And when asked why, he said that he did not want Jaime to have copies of them to add to his collection of trophies. So he got something up under that mattress, up under that pillow in there that people know about. Jaime had always been labeled a high-risk inmate. His file stated that he should have limited contact with other inmates and prison staff and should always be single-celled. And he had always been single-celled. He never had a cellmate prior to Louise because of how dangerous they believed him to be. I mean, the man did sit on tape with a journalist and say he loves the thrill of a kill and he would do it over and over again, and if he was released, he would wind up right back in prison for the same thing. Jaime had a reputation. A lot of the guards were afraid of him, mostly because he had a giant pentagram that he wrote in his cell in blood, his own little blood from his assuming finger, on the floor of his cell. He would tell them that he worshiped Satan. He would yell out, "Hail Satan." A lot of people were afraid of him. A lot of the inmates thought he was just playing crazy and that he wanted to appear as scary as possible to people. He does undoubtedly suffer some mental issues. He has since been diagnosed with schizophrenia, borderline personality disorder, and PTSD temporarily after all of this happened, and it got so much attention they moved him to a different prison, but he was moved right back after the dust settled, which had a lot more people thinking that this was a setup and a job that he was positioned to do. They say that lately he has been experiencing increased paranoia. He refuses to take his medication, and he does not leave his cell. Like, he doesn't want to if they try to come get him for anything. He constantly talks about this fear that people are setting him up, and he complains about this nonstop. He refuses to speak to the psychiatrist. And just last year, 2023, his sentence was reduced by a year due to a law amendment. Y'all better get out and vote. Now, they had not been able to confirm his claims of having 2 victims prior to Yvette, and they're actually still working through his situation with Louise and that paperwork. With his mental state obviously diminishing at a rapid rate, it is unclear at this point that they'll get a clear and concise story of what happened from him. Baby, he is toast mentally. Okay, and he is a nasty boy too, because every bodily fluid that this man can make, he has thrown at the guards and other inmates. And when I say every bodily fluid, everything that this man can physically excrete, he is on record throwing at someone. He did have some time where people were afraid of him, but at this point, no one's really afraid of him anymore. And he is looked down upon for his crimes. No friends for him. And he, of course, has not had another cellmate since Louise, which is crazy. Her family should have been able to sue the whole prison because, I don't know, maybe mama didn't have the right lawyer. She need to call on, I don't know who she need to call on, girl. I don't know no lawyers. You need to call up Johnny Cochran's son. Ain't he a lawyer? I think he is. How many centimeters is he? Does that say he's 63 centimeters tall? How many is that? I don't think that's right. Is it? It could be. No. Hey Siri, how tall is 63 cent? This girl didn't even pick up the phone. My Siri is a jerk, okay? And he a black man. So now you don't want to use your voice. Hey Siri. Oh, do I have you on silent?
Sorry, I can't help you with that.
You don't even know what I need help with. Hey Siri, how tall is 63 centimeters?
63 centimeters is 2.07 feet.
That can't be what they say. Okay, let's see. How tall is 63 inches? So you gonna act like you ain't understand that. Hey Siri, how tall is 63 inches?
It's 5.25 feet.
Okay, he might have been 63 inches. That might be inches. Get out of here, Tyrone. I had enough of you. So this is what he looks like today. And this pretty much concludes today's story. Please leave your thoughts down below. Like the video if you have not. Share the video with a friend into your social medias. Tag me if you do. As always, I appreciate you so much for spending your time with me. And I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Peace. I'm about to go downstairs and cook, baby. I got some red snapper that has been marinating since this morning. I'm about to put it on a cedar plank. If I had a grill, I would then throw it on the grill, but I'm putting it in the oven. Then it's just welcome to my channel and not welcome back. Blue, what are you doing here? On the day of his on the day of his birth, and I have no other contacts. I keep on saying contacts. And I mean context. Maybe a stamp. Oh, put myself in an eye and called the wrong name. The ceremony was hosted. He was very involved in the process from the start to the beginning. Not the start to the beginning is crazy to say. My children barking. Y'all, that's why my son be so tired and he be snoring. Because he works security 24 hours around here. Enough, Julius. There was one evening where he is on a particular tyrant. He is a tyrant. He's not on a tyrant. He's on a tirade. Don't you come up here breathing hard. I'm cooking your food. Why are you shaking? Are you upset? Are we about to fight? Because, baby, I don't mind a little tussle or two. Okay. He tells her that not her being in jail, child. And not long after this, Jaime is found yet again passing off while being held in court waiting on his day. No, I meant to say held in jail waiting on his day in court. Turn your music down when you come through here, okay? I don't want no Gunna concert out your car. I don't. No, I will not. Even in this murder case, I'm getting it wrong. According to him, but someone who was not in. The judge also states that they don't believe that the prison sergeant. The judge also stated that they didn't believe the prison sergeant. He never had a not roommate, bro. This ain't college, baby. It's prison. A lot of the guards were afraid of him, mostly because he kept a Pentagon. Is it Pentagon? Is that where the government be at? Pentagon. Let me see what a Pentagon is. Let me make sure I got that right. Pentagon. Girl, what am I talking about? It's not a Pentagon. What is it? If it's not a Pentagon, let's see. Let's see here. No. Pentagram. Pentagram is what it is. Girl, where was I? Oh, I got confused. The story about him claiming these two, they were not able to confirm the fact. No, not the fact, bro. They weren't able to confirm it. It wasn't a fact. I need to stretch.